Welcome, gamers, to Basement Arcade Pause Menu, the show where we hit pause, sit back, and just chill. I'm your host, Ben Magnet, and today on the show, I have someone here on the show who started an endeavor and is about 20 or so projects into it. We'll get into the very nitty-gritty details of it, but please welcome to the show the founding editor and publisher of Boss Fight Books, Gabe. Gabe, welcome to the show. How are you today, sir?
Yes, thanks for the hype, Ben. I'm doing great.
Yeah, I mean, well, to be listeners and watchers of the show know that I love video games, I love books, I love reading. I write for 2 video game magazines, a Nintendo-centric website, and I am just going to flat out tell you right off the bat, it is also my dream to get my own video game book published someday. So so the fact that you have a company or you work for a company that does exactly that. Audio listeners, I'm holding up a copy of Final Fantasy V by Chris Kohler from Boss Fight Books is absolutely like, essentially like the clouds have parts and the sun rays have glistened upon Boss Fight Books. But Gabe, before we get started about Boss Fight, what Boss Fight's all about and how you started the company, every single time I have a new guest on the show, I always ask them, what got you into video games?
Whoa. Okay, the earliest was receiving for Christmas a joint gift with my older sister was the NES that came with Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. I was a little young for Mario, multiple buttons, but Duck Hunt suited me just fine until I got up the courage to start controlling a little dude around the screen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Duck Hunt is simple. It's just point and click. When I was a kid, I remember my mom would go to IKEA, and we had just moved houses, so we were going to IKEA a lot. And they had, that little kids' play area where the parents can drop off the kids. They could go play around while the parents did the shopping. Yeah. And they had an NES, and it was either Duck Hunt or Super Mario Brothers. Just like you, we didn't really know about Super Mario Bros. Because Duck Hunt's just easy. You take a zapper and point and shoot.
Isn't that wild? Like there were places like IKEA that just had video game console systems in the wild. I went to Maine over the summer to visit my family, and there was this bar and restaurant that had a little cubby corner area that was a TV, N64, and about 10 cartridges just kind of sprawled around there for anyone who wanted to use it. And my nephews had never played an N64 before, so they were getting their introduction. So we played a little Mario Kart, or I instructed my nephew through some Mario Kart. Oh,
they were going to learn. They learned that day on Mario Kart. My stepsister, and my nephews, and my nieces too. One of their goals in life is to beat me at Mario Kart. Yeah, I haven't done it yet, and I refuse to let them win.
Man. I mean, unfortunately, if they're if they're young and getting older, pretty soon they're gonna have that twitchy controller sense that you and I are just aging out of daily.
Yeah, we are, but
you've got experience.
I do. It's one of those things that where it's like I don't want to say the get off my lawn thing, because it's definitely not that, because I want my younger family members to get into video games and such. But it's always funny when they talk about, it's like, oh, do you know about, I used to work at a toy store back in the day, and one day this little kid comes in the store. He looks at me. I'm working behind the counter, and he's like, hey, you probably don't know anything about this, but do you have any Pokemon? And I look at this child I'm this close to quoting the line in which Rojo's like, do not cite the deep magic to me. I was there when it was written. And yeah, I'm like, yes, I do know about
You're
Pokemon.
Kind of like, I've been waiting for this moment, child. You need to come back here once a week and I will school you.
It's like, small child, do I know about Pokemon? I've been I've been raising Charizards to level 99 since before you were born. I was there in the beginning. But yeah, but even going back to your comment about how it's just crazy to see sometimes video game systems in the wild. There was a bowling alley close to my house, and bowling alley has a bar connected to it. But inside the bar, they had an N64 hooked up. If you wanted to change out the games, you had to go to the bar, and it was just there, 4 controllers. And one day, my friends and I were there. We were supposed to be there for a karaoke night. We didn't do a whole lot of karaoke because we were too busy playing Mario Kart.
Yeah, it's just like they recreated an old living room for you. And what are you going to do? Pass it up?
No.
Here's my other memory. So in Los Angeles, specifically in Culver City, there was, until about 4 or 5 years ago, a very famous McDonald's, because way up high above the golden arches, above everything else, was a sign that said Nintendo 64. And I think it was so high that they crunched the numbers and were like, the promotion's long over. I mean, long over, maybe like 20 years over. Let's just leave it up until finally somebody made the call that like maybe that was making promises that they couldn't deliver.
But in Nintendo 64, I feel like at that point, that's just like the famous McDonald's is like, hey, do you want to go to McDonald's or do you want to go to the Nintendo McDonald's?
Yeah.
And even though it's just a simple sign, I mean, do they still have like the N64?
Well, that's the
kiosks
thing. It's
inside?
like, it's all, no, those were long gone. So it was just the sign. So it was really just there to set people up for excitement and then disappointment.
You know what? Okay, yeah, I kind of get it, because if I were to go to that McDonald's, I would expect the old, like the classic McDonald's place, like N64 setup where the TV was inside, the controllers were sticking out.
Yeah, gross controller. It's like covered. It's like covered in plastic, but then the plastic is black.
Yeah, or even worse, you got like someone like dripped barbecue sauce on it because they're trying to eat their McNuggets while they're playing Smash Bros or something.
Yes,
I mean, yeah. Looking back on those times, how we didn't die of diseases, I'm astonished about it, because now I would like
we were touching everything.
We were
rubbing our eyes. Couldn't stop rubbing my eyes.
Nowadays, I would probably, if I go to one of those places, I'd probably take a bath of Purell just to be safe.
Yeah. No, we've all gotten a real education in the power of Purell.
Yeah, especially recently. But we're not talking about that stuff. We are talking about
keeping it fun, keeping it light.
Yeah, keeping it fun, keeping it light. So you are, like I said earlier, you are the founding editor and publisher of Boss Fight Books. Now, I know, just a little peek behind the curtain, inside baseball here. Gabe and I have actually been talking before we decided to do the show, because I will be writing an article not only about Boss Fight Books, but 3 of the books that you were so kind to send me in Old School Gamer magazine. That is coming up in the November edition. So when this episode goes up, it'll keep an eye on that, because I'm know this will be up before November, because as the day where we're recording this, it's officially spooky month. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
I love the spooky time. But I know, because I know I sent you some questions, but also I will kind of repeat myself. I apologize. But I'll
try to give totally new answers.
Totally new answers. It's like sorry, there are days when I get excited. I just go, my brain is like going in overdrive.
No, I feel you.
But how did Boss Fight Books get started?
Yes. So we're talking 2013. I had recently moved back to Los Angeles. I'd been studying writing. I'd done like a fiction MFA. I'd been teaching some college classes, but was not feeling like the market was very good to like really go hard and try to get full-time professor jobs. And so I just had that sense of like, what's next? And I was trying a lot of things out and just kind of reading widely, including, checking out like what were the available books on the history of video games, just because that's fun, and I was enjoying kind of reliving my childhood. And what I noticed was there's some really cool books, but they were all really vast industry histories that got into like the entire history of Nintendo or the entire history of games up to this point in general, which is cool and very like necessary part of things. But they didn't ever take the time to go in deep into a single game or to really like get into the story of a game's development or deep dive criticism, that kind of thing, because there just wasn't time. There wasn't space on the page. And meanwhile, I'd been discovering like the 33 1/3 books about albums, and I'd seen several other series like that, where it's like shortish books that were going to get into everything you'd ever want to know about topic X. And I just think those are cool because it really offers you a chance to dig deep and also, kind of use the topic as a prism to look at the whole world and how people interact with it and like the just people in general. And so I was starting to put those ideas together. And usually when I have ideas like this, I just go online and Google it, and there's all kinds of stuff that I just didn't know existed yet because I hadn't found it. In this case, it was really coming up short. Like I just wasn't finding anything that was doing the thing in my head. So I started making notes about it, started talking to friends about it. One of those friends was a guy named Ken Bauman who he was excited about the idea. He really saw the potential in it. And he was like, if you do it, I'll write a book for you. And he's a great writer. So that was sort of an exciting mutual dare. And then as we were talking about like aesthetics, he also offered to design some of the first books that we were going to come out with. So he signed on as cover designer too. So the idea from there was reach out to some writers, figure out what books they want to write, like what game would they write about if they could, and then present that to everyone in a big Kickstarter. So that's what we did. We announced the first 5 books, which eventually became the first 6 books because we added one, which was we do a thing every time we do a big Kickstarter where people can let us know what game they most want to read a book about, and then we'll tally votes. And so during that first one, they said Chrono Trigger, which was fabulous choice. So those became the first 6 books. Was that series 1 Kickstarter, and luckily people got the vision. They were excited about it, and so that really got us up and running. Having the money to pay for the printing and just all the like startup costs of having a new business and floating us a little bit while we were working on the books. And for years, it's just kind of been that same model of checking in with people and being like, okay, well, are you still having fun? Do you want to read some more books? And so we like worked toward a 2nd season and funded that, and then toward a 3rd season. At this point, we're able to look a little further into the future. So toward the end of last year, we had a really great open reading period, and we got some fabulous pitches. And usually we have to be even more selective just because of some of that I was talking about. It was like being like not so sure, wanting to make sure that we could deliver on everything we promised. And this time we were like, you know what? We've been doing this for almost 10 years now. We've got 30 or so books out at the time. Let's just let's just take all the best ones. And so now we've got a bunch of books in development. But each one's about a individual video game, gets into history of the game, deep dive into what makes the game so interesting, what makes it so iconic. And sometimes the author will kind of tell their story of their own experience with the game. I mean, games are so interactive that it really makes sense to kind of include yourself because you're the only one who's done your playthrough or playthroughs, and everybody plays every game a little different.
Right. Yeah, that's the beauty of video games. Not only that every single person or every player has their own different experience, even their own different experience, like coming to grips or just playing the game or when they came in contact with it. You were talking about your story, how you and your sister got your NES. When I got my NES back in Christmas years ago, I got it as a mistake because my dad heard Nintendo. He didn't hear Super Nintendo, and I got an NES instead of a Super Nintendo.
He's like, I got a good deal on this.
He did. He got it for free from his sister, so she wasn't using it.
Oh, wow.
And ever since, even though it came from a bit of a mix-up, the memories came because, of course, we had Mario, Duck Hunt, Mario 3. It had a bunch of other games, some LJN titles. And that Christmas was, because at first I've told the story a million times on the show, so long-time listeners, another ding on your counter. But it was a fantastic holiday because my 60-something-year-old grandfather was playing Duck Hunt. And this is a guy who, cool. If I were to tell him the concept of video, and this is in Montana of all places too. So the second you say video game, they would instantly think, oh, that's a waste of time. But they were all having fun. We were having turns playing ice hockey. 2 of my cousins, older cousins in their 40s or 50s, were like doing rock, paper, scissors on who would play as the Americans or who would play as the Canadians.
Yeah, I played a lot of original ice hockey on NES too.
Oh God, I
mostly went with the big guys because being able to nudge people around the court, the ice was better than going fast.
Yeah, when I was playing the game like religiously as a kid, I would definitely have a mix of two medium guys and 2 big guys because while those skinny guys were really quick, a feather can touch them, and they would just go flying off the ice and you lose the puck.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I love those moments in gaming where suddenly the net widens and like a game isn't just an insidery thing that only some people do, but suddenly everyone's doing it. I mean, like the light gun is a good example of that. I mean, it's also funny to think like I was ready to point a gun and shoot it before I was ready to play Mario. But that's just a tangent. But like the Wii moment was really cool to watch too, because suddenly all the parents, all the grandparents were getting in on games either again or maybe for the first time too, to play Wii Sports, and that was a bit of a fad, but it was cool, and some people kind of stuck with it from there who never would have gotten into it.
It was the Wii and the Nintendo DS that I remember a lot of people, at least a lot of people older, like the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, were getting into gaming again. It's because, I mean, I got a Wii for Christmas that year in 2006 when it first came out. And the game we played the most was Wii Sports that Christmas. While I tried to sneak away and play Twilight Princess, it's like, no, let's play Wii Sports. Let's, like, the whole family's here. We bought you extra controllers. Let's go. Do you know how hard your dad had to fight to get this damn thing?
Meanwhile, you're like, I really want to play that new Zelda though.
I'm like, but Zelda though.
Yeah.
But playing baseball, boxing, and bowling, it was like that once again, another Nintendo Christmas where the entire family was having fun. My grandmother came to visit and we were playing golf. It was great.
Yeah. I was reading a thing that made it into my first book that I wrote for the series. That was a guy who runs a psychology of games website. I think his name's Jamie Madigan, but he was reporting on some numbers that people found of like the video games that people are most nostalgic for are the ones where they look back and they were playing the game in the room, couch co-op or couch versus with other people. And like those are, it's just like those are the memories that stick.
Even more recently, my fiance and I, a few years ago, when the game was released for the Nintendo Switch, she and I co-opted Cuphead.
Oh, great.
Only very rarely were we playing by ourselves. The only time that she beat a boss by herself was Dr. Carl's robot. And she was mad. It wasn't that, I'm just going to play before I get home. She was mad because she wanted to prove that she was able to beat it. Not only did she beat it, I was so proud of her when I came home and when she texted me and she's like, I beat him. I beat it. And
that's so great.
It was an amazing thing because while we were playing Cuphead, I not to throw any shade to her because she does like video games and she really enjoys playing video games with me. But a lot of times when we were fighting the bosses at Cuphead, she would die right before the boss would end and I would finish the fight. And she would just be there cheering me on. So when I got the text message that she beat the super hard boss, Dr. Carl's robot, I could not tell you how that I was having a stupid smile on my face the rest of the day of work. And then when we finally beat the devil, we beat the devil together. So as you were saying, the strongest memories are the ones you play co-op together. And when both of us finally beat the devil in Cuphead, it was like this great not only this relief that it was done, but the fact that we did it and the fact that both of us did it.
Yeah, I think that's like a really nice relationship moment. Or I mean, both defeating the devil together, which every couple should defeat the devil together at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
And then also, you're proud of her when she has her big moment. That speaks well. Sorry, go on.
No, I was gonna say the only thing that bummed me out was I wasn't there to see it in person.
That's
the only thing.
No, totally. My girlfriend and I most recently played through Resident Evil 4 remake together.
Nice.
Which would be a very fun co-op if that existed. But we're just passing the controller back and forth chapter by chapter, and it wound up being a really good way to break it up. And we had a lot of fun with our different play styles. I got really obsessed with seeing how far I could get in the game using only like the knife and a pistol. And the what is it? The really weak gun. I had this like pride of like, if I can turn the controller over to her and she has all this ammo, like, won't that be cool? Won't you be impressed that I'm handing her all these good weapons?
You have like it's like here's an arsenal. You don't know I walked so you could run,
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly.
Man, I need to get that remake. The
It's
backlog
awesome.
nowadays. Oh, yeah. I 100%. I Resident Evil 4 was one of those games. Like RE4 was the first Resident Evil game I ever played. It was the first Resident Evil game I ever beat. It was the first
Yeah.
Resident Evil game I wanted to play because no shade to the original Resident Evil. I know there's fans out there. I know there are people who will die on the original tank controls. I hate tank controls.
Yeah.
I'm like,
It's
nope.
really awkward.
Yeah,
And only more so now.
Oh, I bet. Like the second they said, "Hey, Resident Evil 4, it's behind the shoulder. It's a little bit more action." It's like, finally. And that still scared the crap out of me. The second the regenerators showed up, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. And you know that one, while it's like a huge leap forward, still like I played a little of it right before we played the remake, and it still had some kind of weird control scheme stuff that they're just having to invent on the fly because like none of that was totally standardized yet. So
Right.
But they have really revamped all that stuff now and just made it very user friendly. It's so fun, and they've really kept in like all the cheese, which apparently was not there in the Japanese version as much. But they made the American like voice acting in the original so campy that like that's how we think of that game, and so they're like, well, people want it to be cheesy, so
yeah.
You still have all the great shopkeeper line readings and all that.
What are you buying?
Yeah. What you selling?
It's like, got something for you, stranger. Just
Yeah.
that whole the merchant is just
Iconic.
100%. Every time I see him, I see someone cosplaying him at a con, I always want to be like, hey, I'm buying something. It's like just to hear them say, what are you buying? Just to do because normally you see a guy in a trench coat, you kind of want to run away. But because it's the merchant for Resident Evil, and the second he flips it open and you see all this stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, maybe he's a little creepy, but he loves his job.
He does.
Good for him.
There's one time I accidentally shot him. I felt terrible.
And doesn't he like go away?
Yeah. Then this is playing on the original because I have the game for PS2. I don't have, like I said, I don't have the remake just yet. But one day while I was playing the game, I accidentally pulled out a gun and I don't know why. I just aimed it at him. I think I shot him in the shoulder and he just went, and he ran away. And I'm like, no, come back.
Yeah. He's very, very valuable character.
I'm just like, I'm sitting there like trying to get to the next checkpoint, scared. It's like, did I like kill him? Is he gone? Am I screwed? But how funny would that be is if the developers put it into the game codes like, hey, if you kill the merchant, that's it. He's not showing up for the rest of the game.
I believe that's how Dark Souls 2 works. Is like, you go to to the hub area, and there's characters that are very important, and if you kill them, I think that's just on your save file now.
Yeah. I played Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, Elden Ring. I can't tell you how many times I meet NPCs. I get a little scared to kill them. I'm like, or even just to fight them. It's like, because one time I was playing Bloodborne and I accidentally shot this guy in the healing church, and he was like, "No, please." I'm like, no, I'm so sorry. Like, I actually, it's a game is truly great when it makes you care about the NPCs.
Yeah, sometimes it's caring, and some of it's like, I really might need you.
It's like, oh, it's like, yeah, but also at the same time, it's like, you might give me a really cool quest that gives me an item later down the line. I gotta hold off. But anyways, going back to boss fight. So looking at your catalog of, I know, talking about Resident Evil 4 and stuff. Like I said, tangents and rants are welcome on this show. But going back to the books, you have a wide range of video games for books, not just because when someone says video game books, I feel that the first thought they have is to retro books, as in like, or to retro video games. Like a copy I have, or the two copies I own physically, are Final Fantasy V and Mega Man 3, classic retro titles.
Totally.
But even going through the catalog, you have games like Animal Crossing that Kelsey Lewin wrote. You have Skyrim. You have Shadow of the Colossus, which, I mean, arguably is technically retro because I assume it's about the PS2 game, but still, it got remade for PS4. So,
yeah, it's nice when they show it back in the conversation again like that.
Oh, yeah,
it's like we trying to think of the chronology, but I think that wasn't out yet when we were working on the book. And so suddenly you just have these like kind of nice surprises where like the game comes back into the conversation.
So when a game like that comes back into the conversation, let's take the Shadow of the Colossus book for example. Does the author can the does the author has the author like reached out back to you and be like, hey, so the remake came out, I played it. Can I like do little updates to my book, or is it like set in stone?
It's mostly set in stone because it's really hard to do an update on a book because like a lot of them are just paperbacks that are already out there in the world. Like
Right.
let's say we did a huge printing and we're planning to sell it off over the course of years. Like maybe we could get in there and make some changes to the ebook or like make some changes to a book that like comes out eventually. But mostly we like to say whenever it came out, like that's the moment in time that it exists. And like, yes, there will always be new news about Shadow of the Colossus or you know, anytime like there's a remake or something, but like to be constantly updating would be kind of like chasing this thing that never ends.
Right.
So, but I do love the idea of these authors returning to the games and like finding new things to talk about. Some of them have gone and written essays since then. Actually, Nick, who wrote the Shadow of the Colossus book, he went on to write all the text for this beautiful art book slash textbook on The Last Guardian when that came out. So he kind of kept it in the family. He just like went on to the next game and wrote about that.
Okay. I do 100% agree with you because obviously when a book is printed, you can't, it's not like certain video games or DVD or not even DVDs really, but you can't just go do a system update and then it's like, hey, here's a new bit. You have to do a whole new printing, which I understand costs money. But also, but even thinking back on that, even though like when the book came out, the remake had come out, it would still bring people to Shadow of the Colossus or even to your book because it's like, hey, I played this game on the PS4. That's when I first played it. I finally was able to play Shadow of the Colossus on the PlayStation 4.
Oh, cool.
And then when I would next time and then it's like, okay, so this is the original PS2 version, but then I would see it's a cool way to compare and contrast. Obviously, the PS2 version is the original. That's how the game came up. The newer version is just maybe a few streamlined controls. It looks prettier. That's basically it. But the core of the game is still there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And there's always going to be interest in where a thing came from, even if the way people play it now is pretty different. Like one of our recent books is the Parappa the Rapper book by Mike Schollers, and he gets into the trouble with playing that game at all now because when you played it at first, it was on a wired controller on PS1, and then like several things they have kept the game alive technically. But it's so much harder to play because of lag. And some of that lag is from the ROM that they wound up using. They basically like it's that thing where you just do a upgrade in the resolution of a ROM without really changing anything else. But for whatever reason, some lag was added to that. And then just the fact of wireless controllers being the norm, that added some lag on too. So what was once like a pretty precise game that you could get good at, now it's just like an unfair game that is actually training you not to be on the beat because it doesn't know when the beat is.
Because even though with Bluetooth technology and wireless controllers, the input lag, because I will agree, as much as I love I won't lie. Wireless controllers are a godsend. As much as I miss the day of like, making sure your controller is close enough to you're far enough away from your TV so you're not like right up in there, but still close enough that the cord won't like say if a parent walks by or your dog or cat walks through, they won't unplug your controller. I do agree that with games like where you have to have those like absolute extreme precise twitch like pixel perfect jumps. There is a tiny little bit of input lag from the controller to the console. Even though it's like,
luckily, most of us are not speed runners, so we don't have to do these like pixel perfect jumps, or most games don't even require the precision of that original Parappa the Rapper. And I think that's a good thing. They just work in more wiggle room because they know like you're going to be playing on all these different devices with like things are going to hit in a range of possibilities. So
Yeah, I mean, I saw Parappa the Rapper available on the PlayStation Store because I do have a PS Plus subscription.
Oh, nice.
My friends on the show call me, or my friends on my other podcast, they call me Nostalgia's bitch for a reason. So I love all the old school retro games, and I see Parappa the Rapper on there, and of course, all these memories come flooding back, like the one where the onion guy kick punch. It's all in the mind.
Oh, yeah.
That lives in my brain rent free. But I
Well,
haven't turned it on because of
yeah.
that. Like you said, that input lag. It's like,
Yeah.
is this
What a
going to be
bummer.
as good? Yeah, because I don't want this game to be ruined for me.
I know. Yeah. But that's one that we do get into because, I mean, that was already out. And so, you know, Mike takes full advantage to do a chapter about it and, and get into the why. But that's, I mean, I imagine if people were to own a version of the game previously, they could probably find a ROM and a wired controller that could play it on a PC or just get an old PS1.
Yeah, or even PS3. Well, there is an input lag for PS3, but still, it's probably not as atrocious as it is on the PS5.
Yeah,
I mean, at least hopefully, because thankfully, all PS3s are backward compatible with the PS1, not PS2. But
yeah, oh okay, huh.
Yeah, that was one of the weird things that PlayStation did. It's like, because I have a PS3 Slim back there, and it still plays, and you pop in a PS1 disc, and it was like, oh yeah, I can play this just fine, no worries, no harm, no foul.
Yeah, I got you. But it is fun to have access to some of those old games through the subscription service.
Oh yeah,
it like takes me on some weird roads. Like I wound up playing like 20 minutes of Intelligent Cube. I think it's like an obscure PS1 game that is offered as part of the service. So
I mean, I played about 20 minutes of Wild Arms just because I heard that was a really good RPG, and I
loved Wild Arms back in the day.
I'm not gonna lie, I was like, hey, this is kind of fun, but it's 3:00 in the morning. I should go to bed.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Well, that's one of the games that like benefits from. It's mostly a 2D game, and so it's sort of continuing the legacy of that like late 16-bit generation of games. And that it gets 3D when you like go into battles and stuff. But that was such a beautiful era for RPGs and for games in general. And then once things went 3D, there's that few years there where everybody was starting to just kind of have to go back to square one and figure it all out again.
I mean, I won't lie. I remember back in the day where I was playing on a Sega Dreamcast or even a sports game on the PS1, and I would see the models of the football players, and my brother and I would be like, "It looks so real."
Yes.
And then you look back nowadays, it's like, what? What was I on?
Well, one thing that I love about right now in gaming is that the realism fetish days that were going pretty hard until maybe about a decade ago, like those have subsided as we've kind of gotten to the level where, okay, like things can look pretty realistic. I mean, there's always further they can go, of course, but like they've gotten pretty realistic. And so now we can look toward more interesting things than just trying to approximate reality and look at style and like try to make something interesting or beautiful or, you know, like really settle on a look for a particular game. I mean, you're seeing so much more like stylized aesthetics than you used to in the days where it was just like, look how real it is. Like there's gleam on the football helmets.
I mean, the realism is pretty cool, but I will not lie. I would take the stylized, fantastical stuff over like the real, like we're recording this on a Sunday. If I want to watch like gleam off a football helmet, I would go on turn on the Raiders game right now, or I would watch some sort of football, whatever. But when I pop in a game such as, let's use Final Fantasy 15 as an example. Well, yes, the character models, they do look like real humans, but then you have like these fantastical monsters. You have the gorgeous background of the world they inhabit with these crazy rock structures. You have all these amazing looking mountains and these beings and equipment that is, yes, it's fantastical, but it looks so gorgeous.
Yeah.
And it's like, even though, yes, I mean, because it kind of blends reality with fantasy, whereas like this could be real. And in this universe, it technically is, but it looks so pretty. And I love that.
Yeah. You love to see that synthesis of anything can look as good as you want it to, and style.
Yeah, I mean, if Final Fantasy has one thing going for it, it's definitely style.
One thing we always like to talk about is like the uproar when Legends of Zelda Wind Waker came out, which was firmly in the realism era, and so the fact that Nintendo would do this incredible disservice to fans by creating a stylized cartoon-looking game instead of the most realistic Link that was currently possible on that generation hardware. It just can't be overstated, like how much people pitched a fit over that, pretty cool game. And then, and then that kind of led to Twilight Princess, them kind of being like, okay, well, here's what we think you want, which also is pretty cool. But like, and now the biggest Zelda games of all time are the last two, and those, it's not quite as cartoony as Wind Waker, but it's got that cell shading look again, and we're like happy to make everything look beautiful, even if it's not the most realistic.
Right. I feel especially with Wind Waker, I love how you brought up Wind Waker, because even though I love Zelda, I fell in hardcore in love with Zelda games, but I fell in love with Zelda very late. Twilight Princess was the first one I ever played all the way through.
Oh, cool.
And then, of course, Tears of the Kingdom, or Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. I finally played Ocarina and Majora's Mask thanks to the 3DS remakes. And,
nice.
And Link Between Worlds is my favorite Zelda game of all time. I absolutely adore that game.
But I really got to play that one.
Oh, it's fantastic. It is truly, it's up there. It is truly a fantastic Zelda game. That's awesome. I need to play through Link to the Past, because I know that's the spiritual successor to Link to the Past, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're going to love it. You already kind of know the map, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But going on to like Wind Waker, because I do remember when that game came out, a lot of my friends who did have GameCubes at the time, they hated it. They were like, oh, this game sucks. Fast forward like 15, 20 some odd years later, and they're talking and they're praising Wind Waker. They're like, hey, Nintendo, bring Wind Waker back on the Switch. I mean, yes, we know Wind Waker and Twilight Princess got HD remakes for the Wii U, but they didn't sell because it was the Wii U. Put it on the Switch. It will sell gangbusters. And I kind of champion that because I want to play Wind Waker on the Switch.
I know. Yeah. It makes so much sense for them to do that. I think the one thing they shot themselves in the foot with is that second screen. So they have to go back and every Wii U game has to be, finding a way to like take the second screen of Wii U and then put it into a single Switch screen, which like you lose nothing, but I'm sure it takes them time and effort.
No, I mean, I won't lie. Playing Ocarina of Time on my 3DS and having the Iron Boots set to the touch screen button instead of having to constantly, because I would hear I would watch videos from the Water Temple on the original Ocarina on the N64 where you have to pause, equip the Iron Boots, do the thing, unequip the, it's a constant state back and forth. Whereas the 3DS, it's just it's a simple button
that
push.
Is nice. Oh yeah,
quality of life improvements.
Totally. And I really wish that there was a way for people to easily play the 3DS versions that you played of both Ocarina and Majora on the Switch. And surely they'll one day do that.
I mean,
upgrade.
They're able to, if Capcom can put the Mega Man ZX games, which were DS games on the Switch, I'm pretty sure Nintendo could find a way to put a second screen on there somehow.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure. But anyway, so as I said earlier, for boss fight books, there's a wide range of stuff from retro to modern. Do you have like a personal cap, as in this is the era we stop at for now, and then it moves, or is it completely open? It's like all eras of video gaming are 100% open season. If you have a game you want to write about it, it doesn't matter if it's brand spanking new or old as dirt. Go for it.
Yeah, it's way closer to open season. But the one caveat is I kind of want the story of that game, or at least like the first incarnation of that game, to be more or less finished. Like I'd rather it be through its sales cycle. And if there's DLC, I'd like for the DLC to have come out. And, like want to be able to tell the story of something that happened instead of like the news story of a thing that is currently happening. Because that's what's so cool about a book is it gives you a chance to look back. And so that's kind of my one thing is try to give it a year or so, or at least like to the point that you feel like you can tell a coherent story that has an end point. Even though, as we said before, it's always continuing. There's always more.
Yeah. And now this isn't a slight because I have Final Fantasy V right here, and it's about say it's just under 200 pages, give or take. Is there a page limit? Because I can only imagine with some authors, I mean, unfortunately, I haven't seen the entire library of boss fight books, but is there what's like the high? Is there like a max page count for your authors, or is it once again just like, hey, just give us what you can. If we need to whittle it down, we could whittle it down a little bit. Or what is the process on how big these books can get?
Sure, yeah, we shoot for short books because I like that, and I think that's cool. Is to see how concise we can get it without sacrificing quality, and I just like short books myself, and the fact that it's about just one video game and usually not some huge history, it kind of feels like that's a natural thing to shoot for. It's like about a 200-page book feels nice. So the biggest we've gone is 256. And the longest, well, I guess you'd say the longest book is the hardcover edition of GoldenEye 007, because that has an extra chapter in it, and it also has a bunch of pictures. Which was really cool. So that's been a nice experience. That came out just the beginning of this year, something like that. And it has to take the right project, but I'd love to do that more because that is a way to kind of like build out a bigger book. And especially if you can find some visual element to it, we've been really careful about that historically because we don't want to get sued and we don't want to take things that aren't ours. Right. So mostly that means you don't usually include screenshots. There's a case for it. I mean, there's fair use laws in place for a reason where if you are criticizing, analyzing something, you can show it, but it's it can be a little dicey. So when we do have images, it's usually something like behind the scenes images, or like if in that case, like the developers were giving us all these cool pictures from like they were like original drawings of the characters, or like handwritten notes about like levels that they want to do, and like handwritten maps. So I love that stuff, but that only even becomes possible when people want to collaborate with you on it or share it with the world, which luckily those guys on the Rare team did. They're really cool and generous with their time.
I mean, the fact that you have, because I saw the GoldenEye book on the website when my editor at Old School Gamer, or my publisher at Old School Gamer magazine, when he essentially pitched he's like, hey, give me an idea because we want to do a piece on this book, and I just jumped on the chance.
That's awesome.
Like, I was, the second I saw that, I was like, I know those guys. I know about those guys. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Like I was ready to fight for that assignment, to be perfectly honest.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
I'm scrolling through and I saw GoldenEye, and GoldenEye is one of those games that I have played a little bit as a kid. I know most of it through osmosis. I haven't even seen the bloody movie, to be perfectly honest. I mean, my favorite,
the best Brosnan.
My personal favorite is Tomorrow Never Dies, the one he did after. And and that's mostly because of nostalgia. Because weird story, as a kid, we had a family friend who was stationed out in Singapore. He was an NCIS agent and he was working in Singapore. And we flew out to go to Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. And while we were in Thailand, we went to James Bond Island where they filmed The Golden Gun, and they also did a little bit of Tomorrow Never Dies. So on the bus ride over there, I was introduced to James Bond because they played The Man with the Golden Gun and Tomorrow Never Dies, my two favorite Bond films.
Isn't it amazing, like the hype that you can get from seeing like where they shot something, or like where the thing gets made? I was thinking of like when I was in college going to the Guinness brewery, and then for like a year or two after that, Guinness was my favorite beer. It's just I just got fully indoctrinated. Bought a bunch of merch on my way out. But yeah, it's I might have lost the thread a little bit here, but yeah, but GoldenEye,
GoldenEye.
like that's so that's like that was a great example of one where it just came together and we were able to include a bunch of pictures, a bunch of and there was so much story to tell that it was like, well, it's hard to start cutting without losing things that we really like. So that was kind of why we went in and did a deluxe version of the book that was already one of our longest books. But yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but GoldenEye is, as of right now, the only deluxe version you guys offer, correct?
Yes, this is our first hardcover.
Wow, the GoldenEye, that's actually, it's golden.
Yeah.
It's fitting that GoldenEye gets the first hardcover from Boss Fight, because even looking back on the very first book, which I don't know why my brain is blanking on what the first book you guys put out was, but everything thus far has Earthbound, thank you, is all been paperbacks. So the fact that now GoldenEye and the fact that the Rare team was really chill to work with you guys sounds like it was a match made in heaven.
Yeah, absolutely. And Elise is such a great writer too. She had already done a book for us on Super Mario 3. And so the fact that she wanted to come back and tell that whole story was really awesome.
I swear my reading backlog is just as bad as my video game backlog, because because nowadays, like when you sent me an email with with the questions I sent you before, and earlier you talked about how there wasn't a general space for video game books. And this was back in 2012, 2013. And you're 100% correct. When you said 2013, I got an instant flashback to when I was in school. I was in Cal State Northridge, and I had a group project, which essentially was the short history of video games. And when I Googled video game history, nothing came up.
Yeah.
It was like one of the most shocking things to me. It's like, we're in the era of the PlayStation 3 and the PS4. How are there like no scholarly bits or things I can take for video game history? So I really had to not scrape the bottom of the barrel, but I really had to look and find and try to piece together stuff and go to Wikipedia constantly just to see what years these consoles came out to make a decent PowerPoint presentation. And I'm just sitting there going, how come there's nothing like this? And now, thankfully, I go to Barnes & Noble. There's a gaming section. There's a bunch of books out. You guys are doing this. And now it's like, hallelujah, this is, people can read about the very games, because I can just only assume that when someone says, hey, I wrote a book about GoldenEye, so many GoldenEye fans will be like, there's a what now?
Yeah. And we found with that one too, like, I mean, I truly didn't know going into it, like, you know, we're doing this deluxe version. It's going to cost twice as much as the paperback version. And like, will people want that? And what we found is like, no, they want it more than they want the paperback. They actually want like a beautiful object, and that, you know, that like has those pictures in it too. So that was like a cool lesson for us. I mean, it's, you know, like we focus so much on the content and trying to get the books to be really good, and, you know, but also there's that collector aspect, and there's like people, if it's something they really love, they probably aren't going to bat an eye on like buying a nice book of it. And still, and 30 is like low compared to like some of those like video game art object books that you see that are kind of like textbook size as well.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. The thicker I see a book, the more I go, yes, because, you know, stuff. But at the same, like, even I have like a few collector's editions of like when they put out the NES and SNES classics, they released the books with that, like, kind of like companion pieces, and they had special editions that were hardcover. Cool. They looked like the game cartridges, and of course I bought them because it's like, this looks so rad. But even the content inside was just so cool.
That's really cool. Yeah. I think though that like, yeah, that 2013 thing that you are talking about, it seems to just take people some time when there's a new thing, like for like the literature to catch up. I mean, because like for one thing, books are a slow medium, but also like it seems to take a while for it to even occur to people, for their like, oh, we should get into the history of this thing, you know? And
Yeah.
so, and I think like part of it is a respect thing and like
Hmm.
a kind of disparity between like, you know, like academic publishers and like what they do and like what they think is like worthy of,
Yeah.
you know, serious inquiry. So it just like it takes time. And so I do feel lucky that like that was when I had that idea, because if we were trying to start this now, I mean we could still make some really cool books, but we'd be entering a more crowded market. There's
Hmm.
other people doing cool books about video games too. And I think that's really nice because, as you say, like it's creating a shelf that did not exist before,
Hmm.
and bookstores that would not have known where to put us. Now there's like some other books to put
Yeah.
us besides, and that honestly like comfort them into purchasing because they're
Hmm.
like, oh, well, we know that this is a thing.
Yeah.
Like at least now people are like, oh yeah, video games, instead of like, huh, video games, which it
Yeah.
still was kind of like that back then.
Mhm. It when you say that, especially when you bring the whole academic process into it, it's the I feel like it's also dipping into the pool of are video games art or not. You know, that
Yeah.
classic debate that we've been hearing ever since the dawn of video games. Are video games, because I would assume that both you and I agree that video games are art. They are a great way of telling a story. It's a
Yeah.
different way of telling a story than films or classic literature is. But
Yeah, of course.
these should be studied. They should be learned about. But then you have the people at Harvard, Yale, or whatever, you know, the snooty
Yeah.
guys, they raise their noses like, that's not academics, that's not literature. And
Totally.
then and then you look at stuff as like, yeah, but there are great themes in these games. There are great stories in these games. And also the way that the gameplay can tell a story.
Yes. And I think that last one is like that's often what I get the most excited about is like, yes, there are some really impressive stories in some games. And some games it's like mostly the gameplay and like
Yeah.
the story of you getting good at the game and then
Hmm.
like achieving and figuring things out, and you know whether that's like solving puzzles or you know learning how to kill a challenging boss. It's like that is the story. And so
Hmm.
like that's like and that is so different than what the other art forms can do. So I love the topics that are like unique to games. At the same time, I really like to bring in the other arts, because another thing that we're seeing, like kind of the opposite of what you and I were saying, is like there were like snooty people that are like games are not art, but there were also snooty gamers who are like games are the only art. And so like
Yeah.
you would read all these things that like if they were talking about a game in relation to anything, it was just other games. But like the arts are this exciting big tent where you can talk about all kind of things. And the best
Hmm.
games are from people who are paying attention to the world and who
Yeah.
are like they're artists and they are paying attention to other artists and not just video games. And so like that I think is a really exciting part of what we do too, is like that interplay between games in the world, games and other arts, and just like trying to work our way toward that big tent aesthetic where we're not trying to make gamers feel we're not trying to like pander to gamers and make them feel so cool. We're not trying to pander to like those academics and be like, no,
Hmm.
games are good, like look, this is our but rather like we want to assume, like just as a starting point, yeah, games are really interesting.
Yeah.
And some games are really impressive. You know, like
Hmm.
not all of them, but like a lot of them are doing something really cool. And then to go from there, instead of like trying to really like convince people of something, like making that really like evangelical approach of like games are you know what I mean, because you can kind of see that in some games media of like games are capital I important, and obviously I agree, but when you get that way about it, I think you're sort of doing games a disservice because you're sort of treating them with kid gloves, and like
Right.
what we want to do is like really look at what games are up to,
Hmm.
and if something's not working we want to talk about that too. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was eloquently put. I was
No,
like,
thanks.
damn, that is a
All
fantastic way to
right.
put it. Because I mean, when I went to school, I went to film school first, and by film school, I was in the film department at Cal State Northridge, trying to get. It was a prerequisite for my radio degree, And there were times I remember getting into an argument with this one guy who was very much, as I would say, a film snob. He was very critical of every single film. Like if it wasn't Citizen Kane, it wasn't worth watching almost.
Yeah.
And yet I'm talking about how I was excited to see the new Transformers film. And he was like, oh, that is like trite trash. That is, he's saying all these negative things about it. And I'm just looking, I was like, dude, I go to see the movie to see giant robots turn into trucks and blow stuff up.
Yeah.
Let me have my fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there's like that with video games, because with video games, there are like, let's take Grand Theft Auto 5. Just pluck that right out of the thing. You can do so many batshit crazy things in GTA 5. And however you want, like if people, you can put in cheat codes. Like when my brother was playing Vice City and San Andreas, he was putting in cheat codes, trying to get his one. He was just going on absolute rampages, just having a great old time. But then when you start playing the missions and the story, you find out there's a lot of great character development here. Like I actually feel for Franklin. I feel for not Trevor, the other Michael. I'm scared to death of Trevor, but at the same time, I want them to succeed.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yes, Grand Theft Auto is that type of game that has that stigma attached to it, because it's a game where you can commit all these crimes in video games and essentially just get a slap on the wrist or get patched up and you're out of the hospital. You might just lose X amount of dollars of in-game currency. But then when you look at what the writers actually do with the game and with the characters, like, no, it's both. It's like, yes, it's fun, it's arcade fun, and it's telling a really decent story that I want to see to the end.
Well, I mean, the people at Rockstar are clearly up to something. They have a lot of ideas, and and look, like they also have a ton of different writers on every game, and not everybody nails it. Not every mission has a great story. Like you can really like look at different parts and be like, okay, that I really liked, that not so strong, but like they have a lot of ideas about America and violence and it's one book of ours that really addresses that is Matt Martincini's book on the first Red Dead Redemption game. And he does this great job of like placing the game in a context of the Western genre. I don't know about you, but like when I was growing up, the Western was kind of out. And so I didn't pay attention to it. It just seemed like granddad stuff. And so like, but what I kind of learned by reading that book several times and working on it with the author was like, it just from the book itself is like, that is one of the genres about America and the story that America tells itself about itself. And it's like a way of presenting values. And so like the Rockstar people, who some of whom were also GTA 5 people, like they're really interested in that. And you get into like the characters and the scenes in that game, you see that thing all the time, and sometimes they're kind of leaning into the tropes, but often they're also kind of questioning them and questioning modernity and progress and what happens when the railroad comes. So yeah, I mean that's just a long way of of agreeing with you and saying like there's a lot going on there, and you could miss it because you're just watching like a guy pull a lady out of a car and drive off. But there's it's there if you want it.
Oh no, there's I don't want to get this is not a political show, and also I don't want to talk about politics because I absolutely hate talking about that, especially when I'm talking to about video games. But there are themes of like of how our current economic structure is bad, of like how if it goes unchecked, it can bring about dystopia, like games like BioShock. You have other games like the Fallout series, where it's like if unchecked power goes too far, or corporations go too far. And then you get people on the complete other side who don't see any of that, and they say, here's some games about the one side of the political spectrum, and every other gamer who's played the games goes, that's not, did you play these games? Ocarina of Time, really? Yeah,
that's interesting. And there is a whole strain of writing about games where like especially in some mainstream publications, although I think this is getting better, is like they hired someone who doesn't know anything about this to try to do the best they can real quick. And that's okay. But like, there's a lot of people who really have spent a lot of time thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. But then when it all comes down to it, because I remember the game I'm playing right now, the game that has definitely made me some feelings is not Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, I have been playing that game ever since I got it in March, and I'm like 200 plus hours into it, and I want to beat it because, Final Fantasy 16, Sea of Stars, I really want to play Sea of Stars, and all these other great games are coming out. But so many times have I been playing this game, I've been feeling the story, like the connection of the characters. And not to get too spoiled, I know a lot of people have beaten the game already, but there's like some scenes in this game that just ache my heart, and I just want to go to the final boss and just beat the crap out of him because I'm so mad of what happened to a character.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, yeah, I also played a lot of that game and did beat it, but probably also didn't do as much of it as you have. But there is some really exciting stuff in there, and the without getting spoilery, the end of the getting the Master Sword part stands out to me as very impressively put together. But I will say, like, in that game, a lot of my favorite stuff is not main quest stuff. It's actually just weird, like humorous, like tangential side quests. Going about being a reporter, meeting a Kuko, who promises to read my fortune, and then he's a member of the Yiga clan. And like that to me is so goofy and so like light on its feet in the way that like sometimes Zelda has trouble not just like falling right into the chasm of fantasy tropes, but it's like when they're having fun and when they're really stretching themselves. It's pretty cool.
Like every time I see just mighty bananas in an area that's not in Faron or over by a Laurelin village, I always I always poke it. And then, the Yiga clan, the Yiga member just pops out of nowhere. And I'm like, all right, cool. Or when I finally did get the Yiga costume, I snuck into the Yiga base. I stole all their stuff. Yeah. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to see what happens. Save, take off my thing. Intruder alert.
Yes.
Like, all right, cool. Let's dance.
I loved all the expanded Yiga content.
The Yiga clan was one of those characters or those things in Breath of the Wild that I wasn't annoyed by, but I was also very like,
it's a little one note a lot of the time.
And then here in Tears of the Kingdom, it's like they're trying to turn the depths into like their big expanses. Like this is actually kind of dangerous. Yeah. And see now how they expanded underneath Hyrule. They literally became Hyrule's underworld. I'm like, oh, okay, so I really should stop Koga now. All right. And Koga's still as silly as ever. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Koga. But going back to the books, can you walk me through the process that an author has to go through from pitching, writing, essentially like a TLDR of the process of an author pitching their book to you guys and all the way to getting the book published?
Sure. Okay.
And please don't mind me because I will.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll see how TLDR can be about it. But it's so usually somebody comes to us with an idea for a game, and real quick, what I like about that is I don't want the entirety of the series to just be based on like my own taste in which games I think are cool. I love when people like come to me with their ideas, and like it also, I think it creates better books when you have passionate, curious people writing them. And usually, it's not just like somebody wants to write a book about a video game. They have like a video game in mind, or maybe there's like three that they could write about a good book about, but that's different for every person. So we encourage people to throw ideas at us, and we hold an open reading period. And so during that time, like what we're looking for is pitches that give us a chance to look at a game or series that we've never done before, that where the author is like really inciting our own curiosity about like, oh, this will give me a chance to revisit this game, often a game that the author loves, and a chance to like look at what makes it so interesting, what makes it so iconic, and then to take a look at like the history of how it was made, why it impacted culture so much, how it was influential. And so like the best ones, the best pitches kind of get me excited about it because they're just sort of like showing me the potential of the book, and also and also showing me like the potential of all the questions that they want to answer. Like, here's all the things that I'm so curious about, and I have to write
Mhm.
this book to learn them. And so
Mhm.
that kind of winds up. And sometimes people will also like write us a little like teaser, like part of a chapter, so we can get a little more sense of like their personal writing style and that kind of thing. And so we will. I also put together a little crew, and it's different people every time, but we will read all the pitches and then get a chance to talk about them. So we'll just like, each of us go through and make our own notes. And then kind of once we're having the conversation, then we're each kind of jockeying for some of our favorites and making our cases and all that good
Mhm.
stuff. And then, and then we pick the ones we pick, and we talk to the authors and just make sure that their vision is aligned with ours, and talk to them about the press and how we do things, and make sure that all sounds good. And so we sign contracts with them, and then from there it kind of works differently with every author in terms of like while they're creating the first draft. Sometimes we help out some with like putting some of the research together.
Mhm.
Mike Williams, our other editor, he's really good at doing that, and so we'll kind of uh, help people find, especially things that like aren't on the regular web,
Right.
that are on like a old newspapers, like newspapers.com account, or like going, if somebody's looking for like old academic papers about video games or that kind of thing. So, but a lot of the time, people will just kind of work on their book for a while. And
Mhm.
when things really get going is when they get us a first draft, and then one of us will read it and give them notes, and we'll kind of have that editorial back and forth with the author, really as many times as it takes. But usually what we're doing is, kind of starting with the big picture and kind of looking at what all the chapters are doing, and the goals of the book. And then as it goes through, we just get smaller and smaller into like paragraph level, sentence level stuff, and then just like word choices and looking for errors. And
Mhm.
so by the end, if we're getting really nitpicky, that's when we know it's ready, and it's like
Okay.
time to move on to copy editing and all that. So then at that
Mhm.
point, we're starting to put like a cover together, and we're getting ready to like announce the books and a new Kickstarter and that kind of thing. And that's always really fun time because we usually kind of keep a lid on it until we have something to show people.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is just because I want to be sure that if we are coming to people and saying, "Hey, would you please pre-order these books?" like we can really deliver, and we know that it's going
Right.
to be good, and that this is a book that's gonna happen.
Mhm.
So that's good. So and then after it's funded, then we're printing the book and putting it out and all that good stuff. So that's what was that? Was that short-ish?
That was shortest. No, that was that
Yeah.
was actually pretty good.
Okay.
Not pretty good. That was very good. So you said it. So for the writer, is there like a time limit for when a writer, like, so say a writer gets their pitch accepted? Is there like a, hey, do you mind having like X, Y, and Z done around this time, or is it all completely up to the writers? Like whenever they get it done, they get it done, or
Well,
is there a deadline,
we
so to
do
speak?
like we do kind of create deadlines, but they're
Hmm.
usually around what the writer thinks they can accomplish, because people work
Okay.
at really different speeds,
Right.
and everybody has their day jobs.
Yeah. I
Like
know that for a fact.
like we're all doing the best we can. We're all like, I mean, for me, the day job is running the press, but yeah, for all of our authors, they've got entire lives, and so we do want to accommodate busy people, and so where that has taken us is to this point where we talk to people about the time frame when we first start working with them, and then that kind of gives us a sense of at least what we're shooting for, and then we kind of keep checking in from there. But it's usually, really, it's never a kind of thing where like it's taking a long time, so we don't want the book anymore. Because, I mean, there's not really like a time frame where
Right.
suddenly we don't want to read a book about X video game. So that's kind of how it works. And we really don't start sequencing the books in terms of like this will go out then and this will go out then until the books are like getting close to finished. Kind of for the same reason that I was talking about earlier, is because it's always such a journey. You really don't know how long it's going to take. And I've learned it's kind of better not to try to guess too much, because then you might be locking yourself into a timeline that isn't actually what happens. And even then there's delays, there's like printer delays. There's like all these acts of God kind of that can happen.
Yeah. I cannot tell you how many times I have been given an assignment, or I give myself assignments for the magazines I write for. And I say, I'm going to get this thing done at this time. Then something, because like you said, life happens, jobs happen, and it just rears its ugly head. And it's like, oh, I didn't get the thing I done. Then I, spiral into depression, and I'm all sad again. Because like you said, stuff happens. So even though I do podcasting, I do writing on the side, I have a 9-to-5 job that unfortunately doesn't let me get off of work until 12:30 in the morning. And I don't get home until around 1 a.m. So already I am exhausted. And the days where I'm able to get articles or even just a podcasting projects done is a bloody miracle in some way, shape. So I completely understand that.
Totally. And that's kind of my approach to my writing too, to be honest with you, is like, I got this job that I do, and then I've always got my work, but it's like, it sounds like you're like this too, but it is always that tension of how do I get all the things done, keep all the balls in the air? How do I try to not let anybody down? And then also, how do I pursue the stuff that makes me happy and keeps it makes it worth doing?
Exactly. It's a struggle, but you know what? Doing stuff like this, like the show, writing for the magazines, it's stuff I love doing. It's stuff I have fun with. Now, if this was my full-time job, I would absolutely be 100% okay with that. Yeah. But at the same time, it's still something I love doing, and I'm just thankful to have time to do it. So I love it how we're just constantly, we're talking about one thing, we dovetail to something else, and then I'm trying to come back to them.
Well, this is how it has to go. We're talking about life, man. I mean, but I agree. And when I think about like some of the most fun I've had, like with the press, like writing those 2 books that I wrote for Boss Fight, like was a blast. Like it's just fun, to be a writer and to create.
So I do have to ask, do you now this might be asking what your favorite child is, but do you have a favorite book that you guys made for Boss Fight? Is there like one book that, it doesn't have to be about your favorite game, it's just like the one book that when you read it, like you got the pitch, you got the book, it put out, it's like everything about it just blew you away. It's like, wow, this guy or this person was onto something and they delivered. Is there a book like that for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely more than one. I don't want to get too like playing favorites with it.
You can pick 5, that's fine.
Well, but I can say like numbers wise, there is like this one book that for whatever reason like caught fire in a way that we're still kind of wondering like, okay, well, what's the next one like that? And it's the Spelunky book, and I do agree that it's a really good one. I mean, it's one that I like a lot. But that one, for whatever reason, but partly because it was written by Derek, who's the creator of the game, and people were really curious to like get his perspective, was like that just became like one of the books that people say like, oh, if you're getting into like indie game development, you should read this. And so I think like, and just for a lot of creative people, that kind of became an inspiring book. So I'm really glad that one took off, and I'm really like proud of the legacy of it. Yeah, I don't know. I like as for my own taste, it's kind of like I use it as much as I can when I'm like helping people with their books and I'm editing them and I'm kind of like prodding their arguments, being like, okay, but what about this? What about this? What about this? But then eventually, like, there's a time to just sort of like relax and turn it off and be like, okay, and like it's that like delicate dance of
Right.
wanting the book to be as good as possible, and then ultimately it's also their book and it's their name on the cover, and like they need to be proud of it too, and like they need to stand by it. So hopefully we like nail that as best we can most of the time. There's always like the editorial like feeling of like, are they hating me? Like, am I being so mean? Like making all these notes. But I think like the trick to it is you try to keep the end game in sight. You try to like keep the enthusiasm going because it is way more of a marathon than a sprint. And so you try to keep like both of your eyes on the prize in terms of like, this is going to be a great book and we are like on the road there. And so, I don't know. I'm really proud of our authors. I'm really impressed with them. They brought so many ideas to the table, and so many stories that like, as I said, like I never would have thought of. And like, this is, it's a project that's bigger than me. I've been the like full-time, only employee of the press the whole time, I mean, it's my baby, but like, each of these books is like theirs, it's like really theirs. So I don't know. That's it. I'm proud of them.
So going on, so when I was doing some preliminary research about Boss Fight, not only for the article, but also for this podcast episode, there was a really cool line that I liked about on your website, like on the about page for like sending in submissions, and how while Boss Fight is, as of right now, it's most well known for documentary style books on certain video games, but you're willing to branch out a little bit more. Can you expand on that a little bit, as in what exactly that details, or is it still just a very broad open concept that if you give us a decent idea, we'll go ahead and work with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little of both, right? Because like I kind of realized at one point, like we could be making people think that like we don't want certain cool books that they're like, maybe they're already writing about video games, and like I don't want to turn down possibilities before I even hear them, right? And so like what we started with was kind of like this narrow parameter for what one of these books is going to be. Like it's about one game, and it's this it's like these many pages. And so, but as time goes on, I just kind of thought about like, oh, okay, like we've been doing that for a while, and then how could we expand on that a little bit, or like, and so, we haven't really taken any on yet that are doing something radically different. But I will say, like, there's been a little bit more willingness to maybe like there's a book that's about two games at once, like two games in a series, and it just makes sense to talk about them both at the same time. So like that kind of thing is what we've started opening up to. And I could see like if there's like a history of a particular console, or if there was like a book that someone was writing about a particular game creator that was like so interesting that we might be able to put it out. We might not put it in the numbered series to like kind of hold it a little bit apart from that thing, but I am interested in doing different things because ultimately I want to put out good books and put out really different books.
Right. And when you say like two different copies of the game, first thing that came to my mind is Pokemon. Obviously, Pokemon, ever since the game's inception, has two different versions, sometimes 3 or 4 different versions as time goes on.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And it's like, because I remember I got into a little bit of a, not really a debate with an older show I was a part of, but we were like, hey, which version's better, red, blue, or yellow? And I'm like, they're the same game.
Yeah.
I was actually upset. That made me mad. It's like, those are like the one guy who said, hey, let's debate on this. And he was talking about how Blastoise could beat Charizard in a fight. It's like, yeah, I know the type weakness, and Blastoise has better defense, but they're the same damn game.
Sure.
The only difference is that Pikachu, you get all 3 starters. That's it.
Yeah, and like that's a good example of it would be weird to pick one of those and not talk about the other ones, right?
Exactly.
Because so there's some stuff like that. I don't know. I'm excited. I think it's really we did get a few like outside the box pitches in that way last time, and I really enjoyed considering them. So I think we're going to continue to leave that up on our
Mhm.
page and see what people come up with.
Okay. Now, when it comes to picking books, how many when you get a bunch of pitches, like you get over 100 or so pitches per year, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes down to like whittling them down, um, how many books are there in like a certain print run? As in, like how many? Not like how many books. I mean, how many titles are there?
Well, we usually yeah, I guess it's like a couple different things. So like
Hmm.
we usually wind up putting the books out in seasons that are around 5. We've done
Okay.
6 before, we've done 4, but yeah, 5 is kind of the average. And which feels like a good number for like, hey, check out these books,
Hmm.
and without getting others lost in the mix. And we've experimented a little with doing like single game Kickstarters as well. So like those kind of wind up being the groupings,
Hmm.
which, as I said before, is like only based on time. It's only
Right.
based on like when it's ready. Like sometimes we'll find a theme within those and be like, oh, all of these have like creators that have been interviewed for the books, or like we did one like all of these are a little darker than others. But that's kind of done after the fact. Like it's more of just kind of our way of I don't know, naming a bundle that is at heart just like here's our new books, and so
Hmm.
keeping it going like that.
All right. Now, when this, I don't know if this is like too far peeking behind the curtain, because as you said, there are times where you and your editors, you jockey, you essentially to put in a different terminology, campaign for certain books to be put out. Now, if a writer were to submit a pitch, and even though a lot of editors love the idea, they want to do with it, but it does not reach the finish line of it being published, do you guys still hold on to that for future picks, or do you say unfortunately it wasn't picked this time, and the author just has to try again later?
It's usually more of a try again later.
Okay.
There have been instances of like going back to old pitches, but we're mostly trying to focus on the current set of pitches. But it's an interesting question too, because like I will admit that there's been times where I wanted to take on more books, and then looking back, I'm like, "Dang, I wish that we'd gone for
Yeah.
that one." And so, but so, and sometimes we'll reach out. Other times, we'll just kind of let the author know, like, "Hey, we'd love to hear from you again," or something like that. Um, but then the other part of it is just logistical. Like, it's
Hmm.
a lot of balls to keep in the air, and so we want to at least do right by the people who have submitted, in the current round.
Okay. I had another question, but I completely forgot about it. Shoot. Because it was essentially about like the submissions asked. Because what I was hoping to get in is and to let people know that because I've submitted stuff before, gotten shot down, obviously,
Mm.
and I know the rejection sucks. Let's be real.
Yeah,
Um,
of course. And I'm
so
in the same game,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, I understand completely get I completely bet why am I rambling on? My goodness gracious.
Oh,
Like
you're
I said,
good.
sometimes my brain is firing at 100 miles a minute and
I
sometimes I
feel you.
can't slow down. So if you were to say I'll reach out to others like, hey, just try again next time, do they send in the same pitch, or do they just say, hey, let me try and rework it a little bit? Have you ever gotten an author who is, you don't have to name names, essentially, just like somebody has to know, has there been an author who has submitted a pitch for a video game, has gotten shot down like maybe once or twice, and then finally they got picked? Did they change their pitch up a little bit, or did they rework their idea, or did they just keep sending in the same thing over and over and over again until it finally got picked?
If they sent the same thing, they usually like at least add to it or change it up somewhat.
Okay.
So they're kind of like building upon the last version. But yeah, we do
Hmm.
see people show up with a version of the same pitch before. And, sometimes it's like, oh, well, we're in a better place to take it. Or maybe like in some cases it's like, oh, I know more about that game than I used to. Like I and the other editors like have more interest in that game because it's like come into like it's something that we've like played since then or that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So like, and that is like one thing that I want to stress is like, there's an aspect to it that is totally like non-scientific and not even based on quality, but like just a few of us kind of doing the best we can. And so like,
Right.
I do not think that we like make all the best or the smartest calls every single time. Because I mean, I know that like we have left some really great books on the table, and sometimes I think about those, but we're just
Yeah.
we're trying.
Okay. Now, obviously, as an editor, I assume you have to try to be as unbiased as possible when picking books. But
Mm.
has there ever been a book that's come across your desk where you see the title or the game it's based on and you instantly go, yes, I loved this game as a kid. I cannot wait to read it. Or you look at it and you go, God, I hate that game.
Oh.
Why this one? And has like the title of the game ever swayed as now I 100% get you try to be as neutral as possible and just look at the content and what the idea is.
Mm.
But has a title of a game ever swung you one way into like, yes, I'm going to try and jockey for this as good as it can because
Yeah.
I love this game? Or it's like, I really hate this game, but let's see what this guy's got.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I've never gone full yes just based on the game alone because it's
Mhm.
always about the take, right? And like,
Right.
there's games that I love that we have not done books about just because like it hasn't lined up. Either it hasn't been pitched or it was pitched, but it's didn't quite feel like the right fit for what we wanted to do. Um, and then but of course like there's games that we're kind of like keeping our eyes open for, like, oh, if the right pitch for this game comes along, then like wouldn't that be exciting? But like this other thing happens sometimes, which is like somebody pitches something and both the game and the take that they want to have on it is something that like I would never have thought of. And I think like a good example of that is when Kyle Orland pitched us his Minesweeper book,
Mhm.
like I had just never thought about doing a Minesweeper book, like or like any like the Microsoft Entertainment Pack, Solitaire, or any of that. Like it hadn't really entered my mind because it wasn't in my normal category of video games. Even though, like I played the hell out of Minesweeper, but when he starts talking about like the things that he wants to cover, like how these games traveled so far onto so many computers, like they were so dominant in Windows in the 90s. And then, getting into the early days of competition for these games and getting into like behind the scenes at Microsoft during an era when Microsoft was not at all sold on like being a game company at all. And they thought it was beneath them, And so
Yeah.
like somebody had to make the pitch like, hey, if we put a few games on that, people might like this. And so like, I mean, and he also just like it did a very good job with the pitch and just pointing to all these things that were interesting. But I just think that's a great example of never thought of it. Now I'm considering it. And you're pointing to all these things that I agree are interesting. So yes, let's do it.
And funny enough, when I got the books you sent me to read for the old school gamer article, Minesweeper is one of the books I got.
Mm.
And quite honestly, I was very excited to read that one because Minesweeper was a game that I know of. I have never learned how to play it.
Oh, yeah.
Like when I was a kid, I would see like I would put up Minesweeper, put like the highest thing, and I just start clicking randomly. I wouldn't know I don't know what the numbers mean. I would just be like, oh, I clicked on a mine, and the happy face is now X'd out with the tongue sticking out. It died. It's funny.
It's kind of
And
baffling at first.
yeah,
It doesn't really teach you how to play it.
no, but like you said, it's Minesweeper is on. I feel like Minesweeper is on every single Microsoft computer, and it might still be on there. It's kind of like how for me in my generation, Cosmic Pinball was on my Windows, and
Yes, that's right.
I cannot tell you how many times or how many hours my younger brother and I would play Cosmic Pinball. Not
Yeah.
because of the internet was out. We just figured, screw it, let's play some pinball.
Yeah.
And now
it's
part
there.
of me and now it's like, has anyone done a pitch for Cosmic Pinball? Because if not, I'll look into it. I'll shoot a
Maybe
pitch. I don't
not.
care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's just like exciting to like hit on a thing that we haven't hit on before. And like,
Yeah.
you know, go into this like part of game history that isn't like, well, Nintendo was started in this year and they were doing Hanafunda cards. And then they, you know, like there's certain things it's like at this point, it's like, well, we've done that a bunch. Which isn't ever like just a no, but you know, we're kind of looking out for new stories. And so like, it's exciting when it comes up. My sister and I played a lot of Jez Ball. Did you play Jez Ball?
I don't believe
it was on one of the Microsoft Entertainment packs. It was pretty good.
No, because I remember when I was in my computer typing class, and of course, getting online was very limited because, you know, you're in school.
Sure.
The broadband is like super protected, or the internet was super protected, and it's really hard to go to those websites where you could play video games or any sort of video games. I was trying to play a version of Tetris for the longest time, and we just said, screw it, we're just gonna play solitaire. And even our teacher would say, if you finish the assignment, you could play solitaire. Everyone in class was playing solitaire.
Yeah.
It was these were 14, 15, 16, like it was a broad range of ages throughout this computer class. And once we got done with our typing assignments, solitaire came up.
Isn't that funny to picture like all these teenagers just like playing this nice, gentle card game that's been around for ages?
I would remember my grandmother when I was a kid, she would be playing solitaire. I would be at the table eating my breakfast cereal and she would be playing solitaire. And it's because of me playing solitaire in class that I learned how to play in real life. And for a while I would buy playing cards just so I could play solitaire with them.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
It's like, wow, I'm channeling my inner 84-year-old, but I'm playing, like I bought it. I went to Las Vegas recently for my best friend's bachelor party. And on the way there, we stopped at a gas station. They had a deck of Space Invader playing cards. I bought them because they were cool.
Yeah. Nice.
I mean, a little hard to play solitaire on because, you know, they're not the actual colors of the suits, but still it's like I could play solitaire or I get to play cards with Space Invaders. That's rad.
There's this genre that I think is pretty cool. That's like, I mean, that we don't really talk about much when we talk about video games. It's like games that you can play not as video games, but are way easier as video games.
Yeah.
One of them I think is Risk. A game of Risk takes forever on a board, whereas you can get through through a quick game of Risk if it's doing all the calculations very quickly.
I mean, my fiance years ago, she bought me Game of Thrones Risk, and that's one of our favorite. We do enjoy playing board games like that, but we only bust it out when we know we're like, okay, what time is it? 4:00 in the afternoon? Cool. We don't have to eat until 9.
Yeah.
Bust out the board.
Yeah. I was even I'm not a chess guy, but I was reading about how like I think it's chess.com got people like way more into speed games, like less than a minute long games of chess where they're just like firing back and forth, like all crazy. You know, it's like turning the game. I mean, I guess people play speed chess, but turning the game into something else, like because of the digital.
Yeah. And to let my nerd card fly, I was in chess club my freshman year of college, and I went to a tournament. And while we were playing, they're like, "Oh yeah, we have a blitz chess tournament." Where it's like 5 minutes, each player has 5 minutes on the clock. And if your time, like if you checkmate, you win. But if your time runs up, you lose. Dang. So some people are just like, are like getting their clock as little to 0 as possible. And they're just like constantly, it's like,
no longer having time to even think, just like
pretty much. It's just like how it's like, okay, I'm just going to like go for it and pray I don't make a mistake.
Yeah. That's cool.
But yeah, so last question. Is there a game that you guys have not gotten yet, but when it does, you know you're going to be excited to read about? Like, is there now, obviously it's like, hey, someone needs to write about this game, but is there a video game that you like loved growing up or a game that you're very interested in reading about that when it finally does come across your guys' desk is like, ooh, you'll perk up a little bit, be like, ooh, I can't wait to read about this.
Feel like I should have a really good answer locked and loaded for that because it is a good question. I've you know what's like the truth is like I've almost trained my brain at this point like not to.
Okay.
Like I'm so like I try to be kind of hands off. Like and the truth is like the ones that I got the most excited about independent pitches like were the ones that I wound up writing myself. And so like the yeah, I don't know. I mean there's a bunch of games that I like that I think would be cool to read about, but yeah, I don't think I have that like that white whale game that I'm waiting for.
Okay. Hey, that's totally fine because it's one of those things where it's like I know it's a bit of an out there, but because there's so many games now, and what I love about I know I've said it before on this episode, but what I love about Boss Fight is that you have a wide menagerie of games from all different genres, from all different systems, from all different eras. So it's like because I can only imagine that if I were like to implement myself into the editor's room, if I were to come across like any sort of Sonic the Hedgehog game, like my favorite Sonic game, my favorite video game of all time is Sonic CD. If Sonic CD were to come across my lap, and if I didn't write about it first, I would be super excited because I absolutely adored that game.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I think Sonic's a great example, like because that's one that it feels like we got to get there sometime. Yeah.
But so actually, okay, I lied. That wasn't my last question because you mentioned for a brief second earlier about the covers. I love the way you guys do the covers for these books. Audio listeners, you won't see it, but in Gabe's background, he has a copy of Majora's Mask, which the cover for that is a beautiful purple-hued version of the moon. How did you guys start with the covers? Because I remember earlier you mentioned about you don't want to get sued. You can't really use a whole lot of copyright images. Like even your cover for Galaga, like your Galaga cover is really cool because it's just a bunch of bugs in a row.
Yeah.
Is there like what's the process for making these really like for Final Fantasy V? It's just a quartz crystal, but but because it's a quartz crystal, you look at it, it's like that's Final Fantasy, Majora's Mask, the moon, and how hard is it to get a good image for the cover and to make it so that it invokes the game in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've landed on what we are looking for. Is just something that invokes the game. Bonus points if it's playful in some way. But as you see, like that Final Fantasy is a good example of like it's not particularly playful, except for that it's referencing an important item in the game that like makes you immediately think of it. But we're looking for something that like is going to get a spark of recognition in someone who's already played the game, or that at least a spark of interest from somebody who has not played the game. That last year when I was tabling at the Portland Retro Expo, and my girlfriend was there with me. We witnessed this moment where this guy and his girlfriend were there at the table, and he was like, "Oh, why does the Kingdom Hearts 2 book have these like blue ice cream pops on? Why does it have the blue ice cream pop?" And the girlfriend just pretended to walk away in disgust. She's like, "I'm disowning you."
As a diehard Kingdom Hearts fan, as in I have a Kingdom Hearts tattoo over my heart.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's the Kingdom Keen, the ultimate weapon from Kingdom Hearts 1 over the Kingdom Hearts heart.
Nice.
Yeah, I absolutely love that game series.
Oh, that's awesome.
I blame Kingdom Hearts for getting into Final Fantasy and a lot of other like where Sonic got me my start. Mega Man had me stay. Kingdom Hearts was the stamp of approval, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah.
But yeah, because for that cover, it's the sea salt ice cream.
Yes.
And I'm actually mad at myself I didn't pick up the Kingdom Hearts book when I was there because I was at Portland Retro Gaming Expo last year.
Oh, okay.
And I bought this at that booth last year.
If you go this year, come say hi.
Not only that, I got it signed.
All right.
Chris was there. I bought both the Chris. Funny enough, how we were talking about how there's like a lot more video game books nowadays. When I was at PRGE last year, unfortunately, I won't be there this year due to other stuff going on in life. I will try my best to be there next year, though. Fingers crossed. Right. But I felt like I bought more books at PRGE than I did video games. I did buy some video games. You kind of have to. I feel like it's a law, or you're going against the Geneva Convention if you don't. but I bought a lot of literature. I bought books, and I was more excited about the books I bought than the games I was going to play.
That's great. Well, that's what I love about Portland Retro too. Like, though, it feels like when I'm tabling there, like those are our people, right? Because it's people
Yeah,
who love games, but particularly love old games and like remembering them and are nostalgic for them, but also like are interested in the history and with like engaging with them on a deeper level. And so like it's perfect. It like and like it's so fun to meet people there and to some of whom know about us and some we're kind of like introducing them to the books for the first time.
hmm
Oh, but
yeah,
you were asking about the cover. I mean, but what we usually do is like we'll have a little like email chain where we're just throwing out ideas, and like really like looking for the objects that could be really cool references, and
right.
I like and the idea of like the moon for Majora's Mask. It's like that's maybe the most iconic thing in it, but like when we kind of had the idea of like let's see if we can make it really close up though, like it's
Yeah.
already like coming upon you, then I don't know, then it made it seem extra fun.
No, I'm so glad you did that because I was trying to think, like, because I see the copy of Majora's Mask behind you, and I'm just thinking about it because, like, the main plot of the game is the moon is falling on Termina, and you have to save them.
Yeah.
Like, if I was the only other thing that I think could work with Majora's Mask as a cover would possibly be the comedy and tragedy masks, like the
Oh, that's
drama
cool.
masks,
Yeah.
because there are some really funny bits in the game. Like you have a hand coming out of a toilet. I mean, that's funny,
Yeah.
but majority of the game is complete tragedy. Like when like there's so many theories. I don't know what's I apologize because I feel like I should have read the book. I haven't yet.
Oh, it's
Once
okay.
I swear, next time I see you guys at a booth, I really hope I have a fat stack of cash because your boy be dropping some dollars at that point in time.
Yes.
Uh, but like there are so many theories that the game is going through the 5 stages of grief. You have Termina who's in denial. You have the Deku Scrub or the you have the Deku Scrub who's in like anger, or you have like one of the Gorons who's in anger. You have the Zora who's bargaining. You have a whole bunch of other
Yeah.
and until up until you get to the final boss, which is finally acceptance of
Right.
death.
Right.
And once again, when video games take these grand themes and they just throw them in there, and when you're playing them when you're a kid, you don't notice them, but then when you see them again as an adult, you go, "Oh, I finally am picking up what these creators and the developers are putting down," and the game just hits a whole lot harder.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, your teaser for the book is I do engage with that theory. It gets some time, and, and that one, and especially the Link is dead theory, which
Yeah.
was also a very popular internet one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that one because I don't like playing as a dead Link, but at the same time,
Yeah,
I mean, at the same time, when people talk about Majora's Mask, or even because I have the Hyrule Historia, I haven't read it cover to cover, but I've read the timeline bit a lot. And as if I can understand the Kingdom Hearts timeline, I don't know how I could somewhat understand the Zelda timeline. Because even now, I'm like, this is some bonkers crap, y'all.
yeah. Well, and it's fabricated
It is
absolutely after the fact. I
100%.
mean, and they have delivered other timelines in the past that directly contradict it, because in each timeline they're just trying to make the fans happy,
Yeah,
and they I believe that the one that they settled on is based on stuff that fans put together, and they kind of looked
yeah.
at that and they were like, yeah, that's pretty cool, let's go with that one.
And at the same time, I was just totally okay with Zelda just being Zelda. It's like Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Every Final Fantasy game, unless there's a numeric number, not the Roman numeral, attached to it, it's
Yeah.
a completely different universe.
That's exactly how I think about it. Like, yes, like Majora is a sequel to Ocarina, so you do have those, but like most of the time, it's just hard reset.
Yeah. I mean, or like Link Between Worlds is a sequel to Link in the Past, or even
Yes.
more specifically, Tears of the Kingdom,
Oh,
direct
yeah.
sequel to Breath of the Wild. That I feel like
Very
Breath of the
direct.
Wild, like Breath of the Wild and Tears is the most direct sequel a Zelda sequel can get.
Yeah.
Because even
Oh,
though
yeah.
like Majora and Link Between Worlds I would more call them spiritual successors than anything. I think even when they announced that they were making Link Between Worlds, they said this was a spiritual successor of Link to the Past.
Yeah.
It's like they're bringing back the overhead map. They're doing a whole bunch of other stuff with it, but here's a new mechanic. Here's like the fact that Link can turn into a painting, which I thought was amazing.
Really cool.
Here's a new way to get items. And of course, the famous, hey, start with any dungeon you want. Does not matter. Once you open the world, go. Pick a direction, go that way. And it was one of those things. I was like, yeah, this is great. And of course, once I finally do go to Link to the Past, it's like, yeah, I can see where Link to the Worlds or Link Between Worlds got X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But I was just fine with Zelda just being Zelda. I don't need this whole like, if Ocarina is the crux, because if Link lives, this is what happens, and all that jazz.
People get very into the grand architecture of everything, which it's fun to think about, but it's definitely not like what the developers are thinking about when they like start a new game. But yeah, all that said, I love the way Tears plays with Breath of the Wild.
Me too.
And like plays with our expectations for everyone who's played it. And it's so smart. It's so cool.
Plays with our emotions too.
Yeah.
I mean, when you were talking about how to get the Master Sword, and not to spoil it for people who haven't played the game just yet, but you do know why it's called Tears of the Kingdom. And I almost cried. I was on the verge of tears. Like I said, that was one of the things that made me want to go straight to Ganondorf and just beat him down, because I was mad. How dare you do that thing to that person?
That's funny. Yeah. I think I'm just a heartless bastard, and I don't like think of it that way, but I do think of it like, that Master Sword moment. I'm like, this is beautiful, just like as a like freestanding moment in a video game, and all the stuff that you had to do to get there. It's just so well orchestrated.
It is. It's I mean, hey, Nintendo found a secret sauce. When they do something right, they do something right.
They really care, and it shows.
They definitely do. Well, on that note, I believe that's everything I got for you, Gabe.
Yes, Ben, this was fun.
This was an absolute blast. So Gabe, does Boss Fight Books have any social media presence at all? And if you do, where can people find Boss Fight?
Yes. So on social, we're on just about everything right now. Hopefully like pretty soon, one of the social media platforms will again reign supreme the way Twitter once did. And then we'll focus our efforts on that. For now, we're just lightly doing all of them. So we're kind of, but I would say if folks want to get on our mailing list, we're not super annoying. But we will let you know when we got a new book coming out, or we got a sale or something like that. So if you go to bossfightbooks.com, you can buy any of our books directly from us there, both hard copies and ebooks. And then also there's a link at the bottom for our mailing list.
Yep. And of course, you could find me. I mean, if you've been watching this podcast or listening to the show, you know where you can find me. But just in case it's your first time ever, you could find me at BenMag27 everywhere. And of course, hosting Fake Nerd Podcast with my bros. But if you want to know any other stuff that the Fake Nerd family shows are doing, fakenerdpodcast.com. And hopefully when this episode goes up, it will be Portland Retro. It will be before Portland. So if it is, cool. But if it's not, bossfightsbooks.com. All their books are there. You could get them off there. Once again, had I had more money in my account, I would have been like, I want that one and that one and that one and that one. Dropping fat stacks.
We're very collectible. I gotta say.
Seriously, the fact that you guys have a number on the spines of the book just makes it even more like, I'm not mad. It doesn't make me mad, but I'm trying to scale down parts of my collection. But at the same time, it's just like having a whole number set is just like,
But as a gentleman who's got to catch them all,
why did you do this?
I know.
Especially since I really started getting into Pokemon, the trading card game. Like I finally learned how to play that through last year. I went to Portland, bought a hard copy of the Game Boy Color game, found out how to play the card game 25 years after the fact.
Yeah. So there's always new ways to engage.
Always new ways to engage. But yes, go ahead, follow Boss Fight, go to their website, look at the books, and also the rules of submitting stuff is on their website as well. Now, right now, open season is closed, but do you know when open season will essentially open back up again for people who want to submit pitches.
Yeah, I right now what we're looking at is like early next year. So we'll be like starting to wrap up work on the final book of the season, which is Kelsey's Animal Crossing book that you mentioned before, and then we're going to be looking to the future. So
early next year.
Yes.
Get that. Okay. Oh, sorry. Don't mind me. Totally making notes for something completely different. Link. Anyways, Gabe, it has absolute blast. And of course, when you're listening to this, be on the lookout for Old School Gamer magazine. At the time of this recording, I believe it's issue 38. I could be wrong when it's coming out, but this upcoming November, when that issue of OSGs comes out, I will have written an article about boss fight books, about the 3 books, which is Day of the Tentacle, Minesweeper, and Galaga. I'll be writing about those books, and of course, the whole process of getting a book from boss fight. So Gabe, once again, thank you so much for not only talking to me on my show, but for talking to me for the article on Old School Gamer. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I truly thank you for your time.
Oh, Ben, it's been a blast. Thank you, man.
Of course. And if you want to come back on the show and talk about books or promote books, you have an open invite, just send me an email and we'll get a recording day set up.
Oh, awesome. That'd be great.
All right. Well, until next time, everyone, unpause and get to reading.